Hey everyone, I want to show you a rule that I came across when working in CorelDRAW. So I call this rule the cardinal rule of CorelDRAW, and I think it's a very helpful thing to keep in mind when you are first starting out. It's something that just if you keep in the back of your mind, you should have a better idea ahead of time what's going to happen when you combine objects in certain ways. And I found the best way to problem solve in CorelDRAW is to be able to think ahead to what you want your result to be, and then you can work backwards and figure out what the steps are that you need to get there. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you understand how it works. So here is the first tool that you'll be able to kind of put in your tool belt for CorelDRAW, and hopefully it will be helpful. So I'm going to start with a rectangle here. I'm going to draw a rectangle by clicking and dragging, and then on top of it, overlapping it, I'm going to draw another rectangle. This other rectangle, I'm going to give it a red fill, so I'm going to left click over here, and I'm going to right click on this X, and what that does is it removes any outline properties. So left click to fill to adjust the fill. So if I wanted to have no fill, I would left click on this X and it would have no fill. Or if I wanted it to have a yellow outline, I would right click on yellow and then it would have a yellow outline. So basically I just want these two rectangles to be different, and then I can show you different ways of combining them. So I'm going to click and drag. So click, drag, make sure that I'm selecting it all. This is a little bit different from how Adobe products usually work. So if I were in Illustrator or Sketch or something like that, if I clicked and dragged here, anyway, in the default setting, I click and drag, it would select both objects, but in CorelDRAW, it only selects those objects that it completely surrounds. So I can click outside and drag, but I need to make sure that I select the whole thing. This can come in quite handy. You know, if I wanted to select only part of an object, I could go like this. There are other ways, but anyway, okay, so now I'm going to make a copy of this. So I'm going to click it, drag it, and right click, and then let go. Click, drag, right click. You see the plus sign there? That plus sign is basically telling you that it's going to drop a duplicate wherever you let go. Now if I decided, oh, I don't want this to be a duplicate, I just want to move my original object, then you could right click again and it would get rid of the plus. So I'm going to right click, make a copy, click, drag, right click, make a copy. So now what I'm going to do with these copies is I'm going to select both rectangles here and try different ways of combining them. The two that I use the most often are weld and then intersect. Those come in really handy. There are other things that you can do. You can use trim. I'll just try that right now so you can see. You cut out a portion of an object by using the shape of another object. So I'm going to click this, and you see it left this original rectangle untouched, but this one, it trimmed out wherever that rectangle was overlapping it. I'm going to undo now. Just Control Z or Command Z if you're on a Mac. Although, I have to say, Macs can't typically use CorelDRAW, so that was silly. Alright, so then, let's try something else. If I weld it, it's going to create a single curve with a single fill and a single outline, and this curve will incorporate only the outside borders of whatever objects it's using. So it's not going to include this curve right here or this curve right here that you can't see. In fact, I'm going to move this above. So I'm just going to go over to the object manager and just drag it and let go when I see it, this line hovering right here. Okay, so now it's on top, so now I can see this better. So I'm going to select both, and then I'm going to click Weld and go into the Shape tool, and you can see this dotted line right here. This is it. This is the border. So we've lost the border that went like this. We've lost the border that went like this. Alright, let's try another way of combining objects. So I'm going to select, let's select the red one first, and then I'll select this clear one second, and let's try weld again and see what happens. Hey, wait a minute, these look different. Even though I was starting with a group that was identical to another, a set of two that was identical to another set of two. The reason is, it takes on the properties of whatever the last object selected had. So the last object in this case was a clear rectangle with an outline. So now we have a shape that has just the properties of that first rectangle, and then this one has the properties of the red rectangle. This can also be a rule that you can use with alignment. So let's say I select these two. I go into Object, Align and Distribute, and then you see how it says all these letters right here? These are all key shortcuts. So Align Centers Vertically. So I'm going to click this, but I could also just click C later. Alright, so I'm going to click Align Centers Vertically, and it moved this clear rectangle over to the red one. But if I select the red first and then the clear, and I hit C, it moves them to the clear. So the last thing that you select, it'll take on those properties. So let me zoom out a little bit, and there's the rule. When performing an operation on multiple objects, the result will take on the properties of the last object selected. So let me show you another example. This also works with bitmaps. So I'm going to go and import a bitmap. So when I go to the Shape tool, basically this is a bitmap image. It's a pixel-based image as opposed to a vector-based image, but it has a vector border. So basically this is the clipping mask that comes with it, and it's just the edges of the image. But within CorelDRAW, you can treat this like a shape. So I can grab a node here and I can just drag it, and it will adjust, and it's like a window into the image. So if we move the borders of the window, it's not actually going to change the image, but it will change what we see. So we can also treat this border like a shape, and we can combine objects with it. So let's say I draw a rectangle here, and then I go and I hold down Shift, click the bitmap 2, and then I intersect. Let me do it the other way around first, less interesting. So bitmap first, then the rectangle, intersect them, and I get, lo and behold, a shape that is the intersection of the two shapes in the properties of the last thing selected. So if I select this first, then the bitmap, and intersect them, I'm going to get a bitmap. There you go. So this provides a really cool way to cut objects out. So I'm going to click around this lighthouse really quickly, and you'll see, here's my shape. I select it, I select the bitmap, intersect, and grab that object, and lo and behold, I have a lighthouse on its own. Pretty cool. So this cardinal rule of CorelDRAW can really come in handy. Just keep in mind the last thing that you select, things, if you're aligning objects, the objects will align with that last object. If you are combining objects, they will take on the fill and the outline properties of the last object selected. And this is something that comes in handy a lot when you're working in CorelDRAW. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and let me know in the comment section if you have any questions. And next episode, we'll get into something else fun. Thanks so much.